Welcome to Berlin. In the next minutes you'll see how bomb scars and the wall's cobblestone seam became a living guide. We'll step through raw spaces reborn as clubs, studios and startups, visit Tempelhof's open runway, and learn why imperfection powers this city's creativity. Watch to the end for how Berlin turns failure into momentum. This isn't about glorifying hardship, it's about acknowledging it. It's a quiet insistence that to understand this place, you must understand its fractures. The story is written in the peeling paint, in the spray can layers that tell of decades of dissent and creativity. Each chip in the concrete is a word, every crack is a sentence. You see it in the very ground beneath your feet. Memories set into the street, so you step over history every day. This double row of cobblestones isn't just a marker, it's a seam. A scar left from a surgical division that was anything but clean. It traces a ghost, a phantom limb of the city that is no longer there, but will never be gone. To understand this choice, you have to go back to the absolute 0 point. Destroyed in war. Not just damaged, but annihilated. A metropolis turned to a mountain range of rubble. The wound was literal, stone and steel torn open. For a generation the world saw Berlin as a terminal case, a patient beyond saving. The very air was thick with the dust of its own demise. In the rush to rebuild Germany, many cities filled these holes, plastered over the shrapnel scars. It was a way to forget, to move on. But in Berlin, on so many buildings, the pockmarks remain. They are a texture, a tactile reminder, a silent testimony to the violence that this stone has witnessed. They force a question: what does it mean to heal? Is it to erase the evidence of injury, or to integrate it into who you have become? Then division. Before the city could even begin to heal from one cataclysm, another was inflicted upon it. A line carved through a city and through lives. It wasn't a border drawn on a map. It was a physical wall of concrete and wire that severed streets, tram lines, and the delicate web of human connection. A wound inside the wound. For 28 years this scar hardened. It became the defining feature of the city's landscape and its psyche, a symbol of a world torn in two. Berlin became an island, a strange paradox of confinement and freedom, existing at the very edge of two opposing ideologies. The wall was a constant, oppressive presence, and its absence left a presence of its own. When it finally came down, the city could have celebrated by sweeping away every last trace. Berlin could have sealed the past with polish. It didn't. Instead, it preserved sections of the wall, not as trophies, but as evidence. It let the graffiti that covered its western face remain, a fossil record of defiance. It chose to live with its ghosts. After the wall, emptiness. A sudden, staggering void. The death strip, once the most terrifying place on Earth, was now just a muddy patch of no man's land. Airfields, factories, whole neighborhoods waiting. This wasn't the curated emptiness of a public plaza. It was raw, undefined, and unsettling. A vacuum at the heart of a newly reunited city. What others call blight, Berlin called potential. Where other cities would see a liability, a problem to be solved with bulldozers and development plans, Berlin saw a resource. This emptiness was the city's greatest asset. It was space. Space to breathe, to think, to create, to fail. Imperfection invites touch. It invites change. A perfect finished surface repels you. It says, do not alter. But a broken wall, a vacant lot, an abandoned factory, they issue an invitation. They ask, what could I become? This is the fundamental principle of Berlin's rebirth. The city's rawness was a canvas. In the voids, culture moved in. Artists, musicians, and squatters were the first pioneers of this new frontier. They didn't wait for permission or funding. They saw empty space, and they filled it. Music filled the shells of industry. Concrete walls became the world's most expansive art galleries. These were not sanctioned acts of urban renewal. They were spontaneous, organic, and often illegal. It was culture as a form of reclamation. The acoustics of these vast, empty halls, once filled with the noise of machinery, were discovered by a new generation. They were perfect for the hypnotic, repetitive pulse of techno music, which itself was a sound of reunification, bringing together kids from east and west in dark, anonymous spaces. The clubs of Berlin weren't built, they were found. They occupied the basements of abandoned department stores, former power plants, forgotten bunkers. An airport became a park. A runway became a canvas. The ultimate example of this philosophy is Tempelhof. a site freighted with history, a symbol of Nazi ambition, then of the Cold War airlift that saved the city. When it closed, the logical step was to develop it. But the people of Berlin said no. They voted to keep it empty. Now, families barbecue where planes once landed. A monument to power became a monument to public space. Markets grew where no one planned them. Community improvised. In the gaps between buildings, in the courtyards of old apartment blocks, life began to flourish without a master plan. Flea markets, community gardens, open-air cinemas. This is a city that trusts its citizens to create their own environment. It understands that the most vibrant communities are not the ones that are meticulously designed, but the ones that are allowed to evolve. This mentality, this embrace of the unfinished is now fueling its future. The same empty factories that housed illegal raves in the 90s now house tech startups. The low cost of living and the abundance of space that drew artists now draw entrepreneurs. They come here not in spite of the city's grit but because of it. The freedom to experiment, to try, and to fail is baked into the city's DNA. Berlin rejects perfection. It prefers the beauty of becoming. It is a city in a permanent state of process. It is never finished, and that is its strength. This is a difficult concept in a world that values polish and completion, but Berlin offers a different model, that a city's health is not measured by its gleaming towers, but by its capacity for adaptation, its resilience, its willingness to live with its own complicated, messy, and beautiful truth. Not either or, both. Cold concrete and warm mornings. The past and the future. The scar and the skin that is healed around it. The city doesn't heal by hiding the scar. It heals by using it, by making it a foundation. The weight of its history doesn't hold it down. It gives it gravity. In imperfection, Berlin finds momentum. It is a lesson for any person, any organization, any city that has ever faced failure. The instinct is to cover it up, to pretend it never happened. Berlin teaches us another way. To look at the void, not as an absence, but as an opening. To see the rubble, not as an end, but as the raw material for whatever comes next. There are cities that erase their past, paving over the cracks to present a flawless facade. Berlin is not one of them. It didn't rebuild its scars. It turned them into an identity. This is a city that wears its history on its skin, etched into the very pavement under your feet. The story isn't hidden in museums. It's written on the walls, in the voids, and along the faint, persistent lines that trace a ghost through the heart of the metropolis. To understand Berlin, you must first understand the void, decades of war, division, and ideology left behind a landscape of profound emptiness. First, the bombs carved out the city's heart, leaving behind fields of rubble and skeletal remains of grandeur. Then, the wall sliced through its center, a concrete wound that severed streets, communities, and lives. For nearly 30 years, this scar defined the city's existence, creating a vast no-man's land, a dead zone where time stood still. When the wall finally fell, it didn't reveal a city ready to be seamlessly stitched back together. It revealed two cities, estranged and alien to one another, and a gaping wound of abandoned barracks, watchtowers, and forgotten industrial zones. In the years that followed, Berlin was a city of ghosts and opportunity. It was poor, but it was also free. This combination of vast empty space and low cost of living became a magnet, not for corporations seeking polished headquarters, but for artists, squatters, students, and thinkers from around the world. They saw not decay, but canvas, not ruins, but raw material. Today, studios and startups wire themselves into these old bones. They don't demolish the past, they plug into it. The exposed brick, the rusted steel beams, the cavernous halls, these aren't imperfections to be covered up. They are the building's soul, a testament to its history and resilience. This ethos permeates the city's creative spirit. Designers draft with the scar as their grid. The double row of cobblestones marking the wall's former path isn't an obstacle to be designed around. It's a foundational axis, a line of memory that informs the flow of a new plaza, or the placement of a building. It's a constant, quiet reminder that the city is built on a foundation of division, and that its present is a conversation with its past. Art trusts the unfinished to speak. In these raw, unrenovated spaces, there is an honesty that a pristine white gallery cannot replicate. The peeling paint, the water stains on the concrete, the ghosts of old machinery, They become part of the exhibition. The space is not a neutral container. It is an active participant. Its textures and history and dialogue with the art it holds. Space left open on purpose becomes a laboratory. The city learned that not every void needs to be filled. These gaps, these brachen, became unintentional parks, open-air galleries, and community gardens. They are spaces of possibility, where the future is not dictated by a master plan but is allowed to emerge organically. This is where policy meets improvisation in the street. This has cultivated a culture of the temporary. Structures are temporary by design, resilient by instinct. Pop-up stores, mobile galleries, and interim-use projects are the norm. It's an acknowledgement that in a city defined by change, permanence can be a liability. Flexibility is survival. This approach allows for experimentation. An idea can be tested, can fail, and can be replaced by another, all without the massive cost and commitment of permanent construction. It's urbanism as a series of sketches, rather than a final, immutable painting. Under bridges, life finds a lane. In the forgotten corners and infrastructural leftovers, informal economies and communities flourish. These are the spaces that planning forgot, where the city's true, unscripted life happens. The city breathes in contrasts. One moment it is cold, gray, restrained, the solemn weight of a concrete slab, the quiet austerity of a winter sky. Then, you turn a corner, and it is warm, noisy, alive. A derelict factory transformed into a vibrant market, its industrial shell filled with the scent of food and the hum of 1,000 conversations. It is not this versus that, this with that. The past and present, the grit and the gleam, the silence and the noise all coexist. Berlin reframed failure as process, not a verdict. The abandoned project, the bankrupt company, the divided nation, these were not endings, they were starting points. This mentality is the engine of the city's creative economy. It fosters a willingness to take risks, to try something new, knowing that failure is not a stigma but a data point on the path to innovation. Movement threads the seams of these old structures, bringing new energy, new ideas, and new life. The old line becomes a guide, not a cage. It doesn't restrict movement, it channels it, reminding residents of the journey the city has taken. Walking its path is a daily act of remembrance, a subconscious acknowledgement of the past that makes the present possible. This city thrives precisely because it refuses to heal smooth. The scars are where the light gets in. They are the textured surfaces that give the city its character, its depth, its soul. Identity isn't a finish line, it's a practice. It is the daily act of living with history, of creating in the ruins, of finding beauty in the broken. It is the artist leaving their mark on a wall, the entrepreneur launching a business in a warehouse, the citizen walking the line where the wall once stood. Berlin's identity is not a static monument to be observed. It is a living, breathing process of becoming, a constant, imperfect, and beautiful work in progress.